podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The 1865 Match Report.
Hello and welcome to the 1865 Match Report. It finished Forest 2, Coventry 0. I don't think the game itself will go down as a particular classic, but it was another vital 3 points in the season for Steve Cooper's Reds as we now move into the top 6, or more accurately, the top 5 of the championship with these 3 points against the Sky Blues. Goals from Brennan Johnson in the first half and a fine goal from James Garner in the second gave Forest the points. We will come to some of the other chances that Forest had on the evening and go into a bit more depth into performances and how the team performed as a whole. But first of all, I'm joined by Baz today. Hello, Baz. So we'll start with the team news then. So unchanged from Blackpool. That meant Bryce Samba in goal, Keenan Davis up front, Zinkernagel in the team as well, where I've seen some people perhaps pushing for Lolly to get a start, or maybe even Sam Surridge just to freshen things up a bit. How did you see that team news when it came out? Did you think that was the right move?
I predicted it. So on the little fan hub predictor thing, I got a free pint for 11 out of 11. But yeah, I thought Samba coming in, Horvath's done really, really well, better than I expected. But the difference, and it was quite clear throughout the game, was when we were on the attack, Samba would be stood halfway up the pitch in our half as an extra defender to receive the ball and play it out again. So it basically gave us 11 outfield players, which Horvath is not confident enough to do. So I could see why he was in. And then the rest of the team, it's Cooper's way seems to be, it's your spot. Now you've got it, it's your spot to lose. So that seems to make it what it is.
And it does seem with Samba, based on these two performances back in the team, that the red card and subsequent dropping from the side has calmed him down a bit. He seems a bit more relaxed, doesn't he, during games?
Yeah, almost subdued, I'd have said.
Until he meets Phil Jagielka again, which luckily won't be this season at least. So the opening exchanges then, I think Forest, and you mentioned this as well during the game, obviously you were at the game and you messaged us saying that it was a bit sluggish. The passing was a bit off, the movement as well from Forest. Was that to be expected though, given the highs of Saturday and how comprehensively Forest put Blackpool away on the weekend? Was there always going to be a tail off?
Yes and no, because I think that's one of the things that Steve Cooper seemed to have got into this side, is that there's always somewhere further to go. It was never a perfect performance. There's always a step up we can make, and you have to keep going and going and going and keep those energy levels up. What I would say is Coventry were utter spoilers. They basically outmuscled us for the entire first 20 minutes or so of the game. And it meant that we couldn't get our passing together. And then when we did get the ball, we would make really bad decisions with it. So we were making the wrong passes. We were snatching at stuff. So we couldn't get control of the ball at all. And then Coventry were, as I say, their entire game plan was to basically just like the little niggly arms around or shirt pulls and tugs and stuff like that, which kind of got in our way.
Yeah, and I'm sure more will be said about the referee and his officials and their performance. But you needed a referee in that first 10, 15 minutes to maybe just hand out a booking to a Coventry player just to calm it down a little bit, because there were a few niggly fouls that they were getting away with. And then that turned into grapples and blatant obstruction that was allowed to go.
I don't really want to talk about the referee, because I feel like this season we've spoken about referees more than ever before, and it really winds me up because I don't like talking about them. But I wouldn't have minded if it had felt like it had been the same for both sides.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the game, the stats showed that Forest had more yellow cards than Coventry on the night. So, work that one out, listeners. Anyway, Forest did go in front on 25 minutes. probably a bit against the run of play. Coventry were on top for a good 5 or 10 minutes before that, and they had a few moments kind of running in between the channels, getting in between our fullbacks and centre backs. O'Hare was a threat, but they didn't manage to really do much with that, and it was Forest who took the lead. A nice move, Keenan Davis moving the ball out to the left-hand side for Jack Colback. His cross finds its way to Brennan Johnson. From your vantage point, did you think the ball had gone out?
Yes, I thought it had gone out. So basically the ball comes across, it meets Johnson at the far post, their defenders right on him. I thought between the two of them, they'd knocked it out, and then Johnson brought it back in and put it in the goal. But I saw the replay on the big screen at the match, and it looks like their defender actually kept the ball in play and knocked it back into Johnson's path for him to play it into the goal.
Yeah, his desperation. It was nice of him, wasn't it? Yeah, his desperation on the line or allowed the ball, like you say, to come back to Johnson, and he found his feet and rifled it in. And that, a good finish. 15 goals now for the season for Brennan Johnson. That for a player who's not an out-and-out striker, that's a pretty good goal return, isn't it?
That's pretty amazing. I mean, we keep on top. We've always spoken about how Lewis Grabban's our only 20 goal a season striker, and it looks like Jono might be up there this season.
Yeah,
it's quite amazing, really. Quite especially, I think someone said on the radio as well. It's like at the start of the season, people were wondering if he could cut it in the Championship. And I think he's showing everyone wrong.
Despite Forest going in front, I think the performance still was sluggish in parts. The team really struggled to get going, passes going astray and moves breaking down. But the important thing was that Forest went into the break at 1-0. Talk us through the opening part of the second half. Were we expecting Forest to really come out and really step up their game in that second half?
Yeah, again, another feature of Steve Cooper's Forest has been whatever happens at half time, we come out of the blocks all guns blazing, and that really didn't happen. It was exactly more of the same. It was perfectly summed up by whenever we got a throw in, no one was moving for it. So the Coventry players were just marking our players out of the game, and we were losing the balls from throw-ins. It was not like anything I'd seen from us for a long time. It was like the olden days, as it were. And it was one of those things where you could feel it around the ground that something had to change. And there was one point I said, they're going to score any second now because they want it much more than us. Mm. It felt like that. And that was a really weird thing for me to be saying about this side, the way we've been playing recently.
Talk us through the changes that Forest did make to gain a bit more of a foothold in the game and a bit more energy.
Well, so I mean, yes, the change was Zinkernagel came off and was replaced by Joe Lolly, and that made, I mean, it didn't make it turn the game into a classic, but it made all the difference to us because suddenly we had a bit more urgency. Everyone started moving more, so that meant that more passes were available and we could keep control of the ball a bit better. And we started to look more like the Forest that we've looked like in the last few weeks. It made all the difference.
And off the back of that, Forest improved and got more into the game, as you mentioned. And from that came the second goal. And again, Keenan Davis involved. It starts with Joe Worrell with a great ball forward into Keenan Davis. He holds it up well and then dribbles away, moves it away from the Coventry defenders and feeds James Garner. And the finish it's just great, isn't it? Rifled into the top corner.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Garner's he's definitely one of our players of the season. He's even when during the rest of the game when we were looking sluggish and out of it, he was the one player who could keep control of the ball. Davis was trying, but he was getting knocked all over the place, whereas Garner was actually keeping control of the ball and trying to sprint a pass out. And so it was really good to see the two of them combine in that way. One thing I'd also say about Davis, I've compared him to Kevin Campbell in the past. We've had on previous match reports, he's been compared to Stan Collymore. Today, I thought there was a bit of the Marlon Harewood about him. So Harewood had this thing where he would get the ball and the defender would come right in close to him, and he'd do that. And I don't even know how to describe it. He'd do this little trick where he'd sort of catch the ball with both his feet and then move it past the defender. And Davis was doing that today. He was like, and that's how he gets out of trouble when he's in really, really tightly marked. He can somehow move the ball past the defender and then run on with it. And he was doing that today, and it just reminded me of Harewood. And as Harewood's one of my favourite players, you can't complain at that.
That's not a bad mix, is it? Collymore, Campbell, and Harewood.
Yeah,
I think you're doing all right there, aren't you? If you're,
and then we've got Jono up next to him.
Yeah, we're doing all right there. Davis was superb again, a man of the match, and I think deservedly so. But just on the goal, good to see Garner breaking through from midfield to get on the end of that and then score the goal. And I think it probably needed something like that, somebody different coming through from the midfield, not being picked up to chip in with the goal. And again, another example of somebody else in the team stepping forward when we needed a goal. And that's a really healthy part of this team, is that goals are coming from all over the place.
Absolutely, yeah. Jono's obviously getting the plaudits, but Davis pops up with a few, Surridge's popped up with a few, and then we're getting just a smattering from the rest of the team when we need them, and especially with the way the midfield plays, having Yates and Garner bursting forward like that to do that. That's I think that's really important.
Yates almost did score as well, didn't he? Right near the end.
Right at the end, yeah. I think it came back off the crossbar or something. And then, I thought it had gone in, but obviously not.
Yeah, in the end, it didn't make too much of a difference. But we'll wind it back a little bit. So about 70 minutes in, there was a medical emergency in the stands, which saw the game paused for a period. It happened in the Peter Taylor stand. Samba alerted some of the medics and the rest of the team to run over to that corner of the ground. So, yeah, we wish the fan all the very best and hope that they're okay. The game carried on, and at this point, it was probably a bit more comfortable for Forest, wasn't it? After the second goal went in, Coventry had a few fleeting moments, but aside from Gyökeres shot that got through to Sam, there was nothing really that really troubled the Forest defence or the goal.
No, I don't think we really had many saves to make. Steve Cooper, in his interview afterwards, made the point that we didn't probably manage the game as well as we should have done, in that Coventry were breaking forwards and having a lot of the ball in our half, which maybe we shouldn't have let them have. But they didn't. There was no real danger, no major threat from them.
One of the big duels of the evening turned out to be Jed Spence against Darboe, the Coventry left back, who actually did quite a good job on Jed Spence, didn't he? Kept him quiet for the most part.
I'd say I've not seen every game I've seen Spence play. I've not seen anyone keep him under wraps as well as their 23 did today. I mean, I think Spence was having a poor game. That's possibly part of it, but he might have been having a poor game because he was so frustrated by this guy that he was up against, even to the point that they swapped him onto the other wing later on in the game because Spence had just wasn't a threat anymore.
The performance of the defence as well, I think, the Forest defence deserves credit, because Worrell, Figueiredo and McKenna, none of them put a foot wrong. You wanted to mention McKenna again and his performance.
Yeah, I think I might have said it before, but I think McKenna is probably my absolute favourite player out of this side. He doesn't put a foot wrong. There was a bit in the first half when we were struggling, he was bursting into the box, trying to make things happen. He's strong. He can play the ball. He does all the right things, but he does it with that. I love a centre half who's like really conservative in his movements. He just does the bare minimum to get through what he needs to do, and I really, really like that. But then I also have to say a quick word for Toby Figueiredo, who often gets a bad rep, but today he was outstanding again. Again, he's not the most cultured of players, but he put his body on the line. He headed it, he kicked it. There was one point where He did a complete show-off header for no reason whatsoever, which I was really pleased to see. Showed a bit of confidence from him. So yeah, all three of them put in a really good shift today, and that's a big part of the reason why Coventry didn't have a shout in the game.
And yeah, good to see Toby in form and confidence as well, because you see when he's like this, just how good a defender he can be. And perhaps Forest teams under, say, Lamucci and Houghton were not really allowing him to play to his strengths and to his comfort, whereas in this Steve Cooper side, he's slotted in and he's solid and he's dependable in there, and he's just doing what he needs to do very well.
I'd say it's a bit like we were saying about Horvath and Samba. It's Figueiredo's weakness is probably his distribution. So you'd rather have Cook in ahead of him, but the things that he's supposed to be good at, in Horvath's case, keeping, shot stopping, and in Figueiredo's case, heading and kicking it, he's really, really good at those things. It's just that he's not as good as the extras, the cherries on the top, as it were.
Coming back to the performance, now we've mentioned from Forest's point of view, not one of their better performances under Cooper, but ultimately they got the job done. 2-0, 3 points, and with that 3 points have moved up into the playoff positions. Now that Forest are in this position where they could potentially go on and establish themselves in the top six, is it more about just getting the points now at this time of season rather than worrying too much about the performances?
I listened to Steve Cooper's interview afterwards, and he says, no, at this time, it's more important to get the performances right. And from my point of view, I'm quite pragmatic. It's like, yeah, points in the bag is what counts. But I can see his point of view that the point of this Forest side is their belief that every time we can get 3 points at the end of this game, every time, it doesn't matter who we're playing against, what style of play they use, we're going to beat them. And so if you start saying, right, park the bus and let's grind out 3 points here, then what you're saying is don't believe in the way that's got us here, believe in something else. And I can see why Steve Cooper says, no, now is the time that we need to play the way we've been playing, only more so. So actually, yeah, I think if we can do it the way we've been doing, if we don't go up but play the Cooper way, then that's a good result. If we do go up but grind out like lots of horrible 1-0s, then I don't know, is that a good result? Oh, I guess we'd be happy if we're going up.
Yeah.
But it maybe doesn't set us in good stead for next season.
I think for us, it's finding that right balance between playing the football we want to play, but if we can find those results when we need them, perhaps a little bit like tonight where we've not been 100%, but we've still got the victory. That's probably the balance that we want to be going for, particularly now as every point is crucial with what is it, 9 games left of the season for Forest. So yeah, it could all count towards the end of the campaign and potentially a playoff place, potentially more than that. We'll come on to Steve Cooper's post-match interview and his comments a little bit more after this, and also Forest's position in the table. But first, we'll hear the Coventry perspective on tonight's game. And we are joined by Glenn from Sky Blues TV. Over to Glenn.
My thoughts on the game were that it was pretty much an average game, pretty much lacking in quality for both sides. Both sides had good chances to create and didn't really take them. They overplayed final pass. There was a mixture of good defending. I thought the first goal kind of summed up the game. It's a cross. Our defender, Jake Bidwell's, got it stuck under his foot, or been worried that if he cleared it off the post and it's Brendan Johnson won't score an easier goal. The frustration for Cov fans was looking at that game. We've had reasonable few chances. Victor Gyökeres had a good chance early on, blasted it wide. Callum O'Hare had a chance late on that we didn't take. And then it's a brilliant finish by James Garner after Cov had come out and been arguably the better side. Second half, but really only creating one good chance with Samba save from Ben Sheaf. So overall, I'm slightly disappointed that we lost because I don't really think we tested Forest enough. But then on the other hand, I don't really think Forest forced Simon Moore into many saves. So it was a pretty much average game, which was decided by a mistake and a moment of quality. In terms of Nottingham Forest, looking at them in comparison with the start of the season, I think obviously the fact that you guys had COVID pre-season impacted on you, and it took a while to get the team up to speed. Arguably, I'd probably say you were more impressive on the opening day of the season in terms of playing, but I think I can see the Steve Cooper effect, that you're very good and find a way to win and are quite solid and don't really give up lots and lots of clear-cut chances. So I think probably Forest deserved a win because they took the chances that came their way and Cov didn't, which if we're going to progress as a club, we need that ruthless clinical edge where pretty football isn't going to win us games. In terms of the rest of the season for Nottingham Forest, I'd be very surprised if you don't make the playoffs. I think unfortunately Bournemouth have probably got too many points on you for you to get automatic, but never say never. Bournemouth do have a real tough run in of games, and if you can be in with a sneak by the time when you go to Bournemouth, who knows what could happen. So wish Nottingham Forest all the best for the rest of the season, and I wouldn't be sad if you were still in the league next season because it's a good away day for Cov fans. But it's a fair result, no complaints, and I think we'll obviously be seeing you possibly in the playoff final come what may.
Thanks, Glenn. So, Baz, coming back onto Steve Cooper's post-match comments, and one which I liked in particular during the post-match interview on Radio Nottingham with Colin Frey. Frey asked him, "Well done, Steve, top six." Cooper just said, "Oh, is that where we are?" Does that give you the impression he's not really worrying about the table? He's just get wins on the board and everything will take care of itself?
I get the impression that, what matters to him is that there's like a short-term and a long-term view, and the position in the table is kind of the long-term view. All that matters is now we've got Birmingham on Saturday. Let's get 3 points there. And that's more important than where we are in the table.
The results, crucially, tonight have gone in Forest's favour, with Middlesbrough losing at home to Fulham and West Bromwich Albion beating Bournemouth 2-0. It's just opened up a little bit of a gap in the table. So Forest are in the playoffs in fifth place, 2 points clear of Middlesbrough on 64 points, and Forest have played a game less. So now there's an opportunity here for Forest to establish themselves in that top six with Birmingham to come on the weekend. But Baz, I'm going to go there. Are the autos on? Can we aim for the top two?
What was really interesting, which I hadn't realised quite how I knew that what the run-ins looked like, but I hadn't realised the significance of it. But Steve Sutton said it on the radio, was Bournemouth's next 4 games were, I think, Middlesbrough, Sheffield United, and who else was it? So, two of the others, like right in that top 6 kind of area, and ours weren't. And so then we end up with Bournemouth right at the end of this run. So there's a chance that we could be picking up points while they're dropping points, and then we end up playing them. So the run-in looks like it could work in our favour. And the other thing to think about is that Bournemouth have been top 2 pretty much the entire season. And I can remember thinking maybe September, November time, October, November time, Fulham and Bournemouth are by far and away the best sides in this division. So for a team like us who were out of it to be in with a hope, they're going to be looking over their shoulders and they're going to be worrying, and it's theirs to lose now. So if we can keep the pressure on them, especially with these next 4 games coming up, then yeah, it is on.
It's easy to forget because of the postponement. The penultimate game of the season away at Bournemouth, if Forest have managed to claw the points back to a point where they could possibly even overtake Bournemouth with a victory, what is possible in that game, it almost doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
Yeah.
The points gap at the moment is 8 points with 8 games to play, not 9.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, there's the way we're playing, the way we're picking up points and the results we're getting. It just makes you think, is this one of those runs a little bit like League One under Calderwood, where we sneak in there and we're just on this run at the end of a season that carries you over the line?
And again, on the radio, Steve Sutton said, on the current run that we're on, it looks like we could get 6 wins and 2 draws, which will be 20 points of 8 games, which will be unbelievable. What a way to finish the season if we can manage that.
I suppose what we have to be careful of is he's not looking too much at the top 2 and then feeling like the playoffs is a disappointment, because that is the risk. And ultimately, the fact that we're in the playoffs is remarkable in itself. So
yeah, and that's why I don't know if the stats bear this out, but there's always the feeling that the team that finishes 3rd is going to suffer in the actual playoffs. And it's the team that goes on a run and finishes 5th or 6th that seems to have the momentum going into the playoffs. Well, I'd rather not have to deal with the playoffs at all, but I'd rather have momentum going into it. That's
it. And the fact that the manager has, in the last 2 seasons, taken part in 2 playoff campaigns, granted, he's not managed to win one. He's got to a semi-final and then a final. The next step.
What's the next
Who
step?
knows? Yeah. It's all coming together. You heard it here first. So Birmingham then on Saturday, and then that's followed up by a Good Friday trip to Luton. And then after that for Forest, over the Easter weekend, West Bromwich Albion at home. Does feel like it could be a pivotal week, doesn't it? Certainly Birmingham to begin with, just to give a bit of a cushion in the playoff places and establish Forest in there.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, and you can never say that's true or what, but on paper, Birmingham's the easiest of those games. So if we can use that as a springboard to give us something to go for the other ones, out of them, I'll probably say Luton's probably the hardest as well. They're on form, and they're the sort of side that we struggle against. So it'll be that's probably going to be the one to look out for.
Yeah, there's I mentioned it in a previous match report where in this run of fixtures over the last couple of weeks, there's been teams in the top 10 all playing each other and all taking points off one another, which has probably allowed us to move up the table as we have done. But then you factor in that we've got Luton away, West Brom still having a say in the race, as we've seen tonight, Fulham as well away on the 26th of April. So yeah, it could get really tight, but also if those results, if you can just fall down the right side of them, propels you into a very different position, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's effectively a whole series of 6-pointers.
But we'd rather be in this position than where we were last year, or even after the first 7 games of this season. It's all there and all to look forward to, starting with Birmingham on Saturday. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Baz, and thanks to you, listener, for joining us. We will be back with you after the Birmingham City game on the weekend with our match report. Don't forget to subscribe to 1865 for all the latest news and match reports on Forest. And until next time, thanks for listening.
Sports Social Podcast Network.